車の平行線で東京は愛せろ何にもない日経システムをちょうだい19万も持っていないちゃんの水お茶の匂いで飛んじゃって大変さ毎晩店長に返しているだけラット一つを商売道具にしてるさそしたらベンジが肺に移ってドリップ最近は銀座で景観ごと国境は越えての乗車必須領収書書いてちょうだい税理士なんてついていない後楽園将来そうになって結婚してほしい毎晩シングで勇気するだけピザ屋の彼女になってみたいそしたらベンジや多少レジラブで青パンで行ってちょうだい終電で帰るって大池袋マシャの匂いで飛んじゃって大変さ毎晩絶頂に達しているだけラット一つを商売道具にしてるさそしたらベンジが肺に移ってドリーム将来そうになって結婚してほしい毎晩シングで勇気するだけピザ屋の彼女になってみたいそしたらベンジや多少レジラブでどうせ私なんてダメだって決めつけてそれでも生きてるの好きでもない男に好かれたってめんどくさいめんどくさいしネガティブツイート限定公開ネットで有名なあんたも君をベッドで転んで中指で言って本当は認めてもらいたい東京女子はこじらしてネットなんか引きこもってグレッチグーグル検索きっとお茶飲みつげてレッドガン消えていって私の下はどでいって四方八方いたちごっこもそうしたがりだ 女ビル中でガッてガッてバッてガッて本当はそうなりたいんです。私はガガの鳥なんです。東京の島こじらしてネットの海に飛び込んで教えてくポイントマックス神取り、yeah, yeah、ネット間に寄り添って NS なんて中出して小千万を一緒ごっこもそうしたやりだ。私は本当は自由人なんだか今は不自由人、がんじがらめこからかってコンプレックスコンプレ東京女子はこじらしてネットの中沈み込んでマーシャルグーグル検索きっと新大久保 Yeah yeah US 間に飛び込んでいつかここまで迎えに来たララララ今日も私はこじらしてネットの中引きこもって知ったかぶって嫌われないように Yeah 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 ネットが消えていって今夜も下はとでいって四方八方いたちごっこもそうしたやりだ。Oh yeah
続く子供の僕らが何も言わずに見ていた。隣が終わらせて帰っていったら僕は一人ただ残り物を片付けてる。誰かが大声で笑って通れば くよペペペロペペペロペロチューペペペロペペペペロチュー街で転べるくらいの美しさが美しいでしょケケケロケケケロケロチューケケケロケケケロチューせーのポンチタンオーワンナイトギャギャギャロチュー腹がもう愛にもう満杯ギャギャギャロチュー超高速楽器的な三原色原則は相対感覚どうしても気になるのクオリア運命則3行以内で解説難易度は星5つマインドコントロール騙されないわあの子が欲しいあの子じゃわからないいろはにほへととちれる今新時代が到来かしなる程度じゃもったいないもう乙女化して化けしてだまくらがして今まさに未来と原子電子なら合わさってみてずっと探していた答えは多分あっちや共感覚見えるのは虹色ホログラム多面体恋せよ乙女理屈じゃないわみやびな遊び笑い終わるタイミングそれではお後がよろしくたい琥珀の中夜のしじまもからくり時計のあるこの街も蝶よ花夜絵巻の君も螺旋の階段降りたり登ったりコンクラベ
Don't you? Don't you? Love me.
happen. I can't shake the look of horror on my new gynecologist's face as she was doing the ultrasound. And I am so absolutely, completely effing livid at my old gynecologist for telling me to go to therapy when in reality I could have already had cancer. I don't know if those 5 months made a difference in how bad things are, but it's likely the endometrial hyperplasia got worse and the cyst got larger. Which, again, had the gynecologist done the test like she said, then I could have spent 5 fewer months in debilitating pain. I have never felt this kind of ire towards a medical professional in my life. I asked for the tests to be done that were ordered, and they weren't completed, and I was met with, "You don't know anything, go to therapy." Like, girl, you're the one who ordered the tests. I hope she loses her effing license and has a terrible rest of her day. I will never get this time back, and maybe I have less time than I hoped, because she just didn't see me as worth her time and energy. OP adds an edit where she explains that based on everyone's advice, she's going to file an official report with some kind of like regulatory body. So hopefully since we sat beside each other on our first day of school. We spent our lives at each other's houses, but since I have 2 sisters, Kate, who's 34, and Jen, who's 25, and Amy has 3 older brothers, she used to love coming to our girly house and was like part of the family. My friend Amy has been with her boyfriend, Tom, for 8 years, and my family knows him well. Last week, I was hosting a mutual friend's baby shower when Amy got a bad headache and decided to go home early. I tried calling her that night to see how she was, but I didn't get an answer and I just assumed she'd gone to bed early. The next day, I found out that Amy found her boyfriend Tom and my sister Jen in bed together. I tried calling Amy, but she wouldn't answer. I called our mutual friend, and that friend basically said that Amy doesn't believe that I didn't know. I was gutted that she would think that, but I can understand her shock. My sister Jen also blocked me, so I went to my parents' house and found her crying, playing the victim. I lost it, told her that she was disgusting scum and that I wanted nothing to do with her. She is dead to me. My parents tried to mediate, saying that she made a mistake and that she's my sister. But I told them that I couldn't understand how she could betray Amy like that when Amy's been a part of her life since she was born. I don't know what to do. Down in the comments, we have this story from Our Comfort. My wife and I were good friends with our neighbors, a married couple that was roughly our age. I went overseas for half a year for a job. A few months in, my wife called me sobbing, saying that the husband had sent her inappropriate messages on Instagram, attempting to seduce her into a sexual conversation. She sent me the screenshots. My wife was sad because she knew that she had to tell the wife, who had become her best friend. She was scared to lose her. My wife and I sat on the information for a day and came to the mutual conclusion that we had to tell the wife. She needed to know who she was married to. My wife called her over with me on the speakerphone. We told her, and she lost it and stormed out to confront her scumbag husband. Her reaction made me think that this was not the first time something like this had happened. After that, just as my wife feared, she lost her friend. The friend just completely ghosted her. After the confrontation, they had had one conversation by phone that afternoon in which the neighbor interrogated my wife, assuming that my wife had been party to her husband's impropriety. We later came to find out the husband had also sent inappropriate pictures and messages to one of my wife's bridesmaids. The messages were verbatim the same as the ones that he had sent my wife. This scumbag had a pattern where he targeted vulnerable women. My wife because I was gone and she was lonely, and the bridesmaid because she had recently gone through a breakup with a boyfriend of over a decade. We managed to convince the bridesmaid to tell the wife as well. Since then, the neighbors have pretended that we just don't exist, and vice versa. I never bothered confronting the weasel husband. I found him too pathetic to even bother with. What's tragically ironic is that in the months before I left, the guy had offered me dirt cheap lawn care, which I accepted. He claimed that it was because we were good friends. A coworker of mine said that actually he was trying to get close to my wife. My coworker turned out to be completely right, it seems. I'm sharing this story to say that it's very possible that you could lose Amy, and you need to be prepared for that. You need to cut off your sister. Anyone that could do something so heinous, knowing full well the destruction it would cause, will 100% betray you in epic fashion. Really, she already has. Also, the other thing I have to point out is, statistically, the odds that the wife walked in on the husband cheating for the very first time is low. More than likely, he's been cheating often, and this was just the first time they got caught. So I think the Reddit user who posted his story below pretty much has it right. The best thing you can do is just cut your sister out of your life and hope that your friend comes around, but more than likely she won't. Our next Reddit post is from Sorbius. To preface this, I'm recently single out of a 5-year relationship. I'm a 24-year-old male software engineer who lives in Seattle. I took a solo trip to Mexico because it was cheap. I've been going through a heavy depression phase, and I needed something different, so I arrived and went to a bunch of bars, partied, etc. I wasn't even thinking about hiring an escort until last night, where I just started searching out of curiosity, and it felt like I was watching myself do this. I was still feeling numb from the whole thing, and I couldn't really tell you why I got an escort in the first place because I wasn't even necessarily horny at the time. I didn't intend to tell anyone, and the passionate hugging was mediocre at best because I really wasn't into the idea. But we had a great conversation about life in Mexico and how she has a kid and is going to school for nursing. We talked about our music interests and her dreams of living in Canada. I ended up paying her more than twice what she asked. She could have been lying, but she gave me her real contact info and everything. I don't know. But either way, I'm wondering if it's common to do what I did. It all felt so surreal. OP clarified in an update that she originally charged 125 USD, but he ended up paying her 300 USD. OP, honestly, it just sounds like you're really lonely. Clearly you're single, and it sounds like you don't have much of a support structure to deal with your depression, so you left the country by yourself and hired a prostitute. Not really for the intercourse, but just because you're so desperately lonely that you wanted someone to talk to. At least that's what it sounds like to me. And then... And then you came on Reddit and shared it, and I'm not really sure why you shared this. Not to be critical, I'm not criticizing you, it's just there doesn't really seem to be a point to the story. So I think you're sharing just as sharing because you're starved of human contact. So OP, please go find some friends. Our next Reddit post is from Schmeck Roach. About an hour ago, I pulled 2 babies and a mother out of a totaled car. On my way home from a party today driving alone, I heard a loud bang behind my car. As I look in my mirror, I saw 2 cars mid-air and upside down. I was shook. Immediately, I pulled over, hopped out of my car, and sprinted to the car closest to me. It was a dad and his adult daughter crawling out of the windows as I ran up to the upside-down car. I asked if they were okay, and I helped them, and they both said they were fine, and visibly, they looked okay. After this, I ran to the second car. It was a Jeep Wrangler that had landed on its left side, all dented and messed up. All I heard as I ran up to the car was babies crying. My immediate thought was, oh man, I really cannot take seeing mangled baby right now. But I had to help. I climbed on top of the car, the right side of the car, and I saw through the windows that everybody was okay. A mom was in the driver's seat and she had 2 babies in the back. The mother was either drunk or hit her head because she was incoherent, and it took about 3 minutes to unlock the door after me yelling at her to do so the entire time. Once the doors were unlocked, I hopped in and started helping the babies. Around this time, people who lived where the crash happened had started surrounding the car. The first car seat was partially mangled due to the crash. I started yelling for a knife to cut the belt, and thankfully, one of the neighbor residents that came outside had one. I cut the first baby out as well as the second, and both were fine. I then helped the mother out. The cops already arrived and were walking up to the scene as I was climbing out. The cops didn't question me at all, and when I went up to one and said, "Hey, I just witnessed this, and I helped all those people," they didn't question me at all. I've thought that we're together because neither of us is talking about it. My girlfriend, however, is not so happy about this, mainly because I left our big house that was originally my house to my wife and my daughters. I inherited the house from my grandparents, and it's worth a fortune right now. My girlfriend wants this to be our family home, and for me, yeah, it is my family home. My family is living there. but my girlfriend meant that when I get divorced, my wife has no claim to the house anymore. 3 weeks ago, my girlfriend and I were dropping off our daughters with their mother, and my girlfriend went against my wishes and started talking to my wife about the house. My wife was confused and said the house is hers and her daughter's, and she looked at me all confused, but my girlfriend told her that it was mine, and that it was time to move out. My wife then said that my girlfriend shouldn't put her nose in other people's business. My girlfriend became angry and said that my wife is a hag who's bitter because she's old. My wife smiled and said, "Is age your only redeeming quality? Because that won't last." Then my wife said that she'd rather be an 80-year-old me than a 20-year-old you. My wife wasn't angry or bitter. She's 44, is infatuated with my 13-year-old son. I'm a 38-year-old single mother living on a waitress salary. Times are tough right now, and due to unforeseen circumstances, I've had to move in with my sister for the past couple of months. It's not an ideal situation, but I'm doing my best. I have an ex-husband who's 40, who's emotionally abusive, hence the divorce. We share custody of my incredible son, Roman, who's 13, who's been so understanding of our financial situation, even at his young age. My sister Sarah is 42, and she has a boyfriend, David, who are 44. They're well off and live in a massive house. My sister was happy to take me in, but her boyfriend David, not so much, which I completely understand. I offered to pay rent, but my sister won't have any of it. So I do chores around the house and cook as often as my work schedule will let me. I never saw much of David anyway. He was often at the bar with his friends, or working, or locked in his room playing video games. When we did see each other, he acted like I didn't exist. My son Roman was staying with his dad for a while as I was figuring things out, and I was worried about David's attitude once my son moved in with us. I talked to David and promised him that Roman would be respectful and well-behaved, but he was weird about it and shrugged me off. Then David met Roman. David is absolutely fascinated with my kid. His disposition changed so quickly that it gave me whiplash. Suddenly, he stopped locking himself in his room and has decided to spend time with us. Well, mostly my son. He helps Roman with his homework. He watches all of Roman's favorite shows so they can talk about them together. He buys him food and gifts. My sister Sarah is over the moon. She's been telling me about how us moving in has been the best thing for her relationship because David is happier now. I thought it was sweet at first, but in the back of my head, I think something more nefarious could be going on. To paint a clearer picture, here are some other changes I've noticed that I can't decide whether they're innocent or not. 1. David texts my son often, which wouldn't be weird except he does it while he's at school. The texts themselves aren't weird at all, but David lightly scolds my son for not replying sometimes. 2. Before my son moved in, David was rarely ever home during the afternoons and evenings. He'd stay out after work and go drinking with his buddies until late in the night, a habit that he's had for years, according to my sister. Now, he's home all the time. He gets home before Roman gets off the bus, around 3:15, and he stays home all day, even offering to babysit while I'm working through the evening. He still drinks, just in the house. 3. Last Wednesday, I woke up to use the bathroom during the middle of the night. To get to the bathroom, you have to pass by my son's room. I was surprised to see the door was closed all the way, since Roman always likes it open because his room gets hot at night. Also, he's been staying up late texting his friends lately, which has caused him to sleep through his alarm and miss the bus some days. So that night, I opened the door to let the air in and make sure he was asleep. And there was David, standing by Roman's bed. Okay, alright, we have just crossed over the threshold from this is kind of suspicious. Maybe he's just really caring. Maybe something nefarious is going on. Okay, we've crossed the line right here. David said that he was looking for his cell phone, but I saw him jump with anxiety when I opened the door. He left quickly, muttering something about how it might have been in the kitchen. Why would his phone be in my son's room? And why was the door closed? Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, I'm getting worked up here. 4. David offers to drive my son everywhere he needs to go, but only my son. School, practice, his friends' houses. This is the same man who wouldn't lift a finger for me until my son moved in. 5. I caught David doing Roman's laundry, resulting in a few articles of clothing going missing. This one irritated me because I make my son do his own laundry. I asked him not to do this, but his excuse is that he's trying to save water. I don't know how to fight him on this since it's his house. I'm terrified of bringing this up to my sister. Am I reading into things too much? Am I silly for worrying that he might have ulterior motives? If I tell my sister and she gets angry and there's nothing going on, she'll kick us out and we'll be homeless. So after OP posted this, everyone in the comments was telling OP to trust her gut and that David's behavior was far beyond what was appropriate, and that definitely emboldened OP to speak up. And then OP posted an update. In the past 4 days, I spoke with my sister Sarah, her boyfriend David, and my son Roman all separately. 1 went well, 2 didn't. My first conversation was with my son. I think you'll understand what I mean, but I had to ask my son serious and explicit questions. Roman adamantly denied that David ever did anything to him. He seemed surprised that I asked. He said that he would have told me if he had, and I believe him. I know that he could be lying, but I'm trying to take his word for it. Like you all advised me, I didn't bring up the bedroom or laundry situation, but I was honest with him and told him that David's behavior towards him was inappropriate. We had a talk about boundaries, saying no, consent, etc. I drilled into him that David is not to drive him anywhere, text him anywhere, and to be around him alone under any circumstances. I also explained what grooming is and that it's what David's been doing to him. Then he said something that broke my heart. He apologized for letting David treat him that way and that he shouldn't have fell for it. Those were his exact words. I assured him that none of this was his fault. I want to make it clear that David is not preying on him because of how he looks or how he acts. He's doing it because he's a predator and they prey on the vulnerable. Honestly, I could tell that the conversation had left him a little shell-shocked. To know that the person you liked and trusted isn't who you thought he was would leave any kid rattled. For the rest of the night, he followed me around like a lost puppy. It did break my heart a little to see him like that, but I don't want him to feel a false sense of security around David, so I have no regrets about it. Sarah was next. I knew that it would turn into an argument before the conversation even began. It's always been that way with her. My sister is nice, but not kind. I told her that I was uncomfortable with the way that David acts around Roman, and I think that it's a lot deeper than what he portrays it to be. I mentioned that I didn't like the gift giving and the constant texting, and I brought up the bedroom and laundry incidents. Like I predicted, she was offended that I was accusing her boyfriend of grooming my son. She didn't see how this was proof of anything. Do you know how many socks and pairs of underwear I've lost while doing the laundry? It's probably stuck somewhere in the dryer. The more I expressed my concerns, the more defensive she got. She thinks that I'm manic, essentially. She said that as soon as I get a roof over my head, food in the fridge, and a steady job, I intentionally screw it up because deep down, I don't think I deserve happiness. That she tries to help me every time, but I end up stabbing her in the back like I am right now. So she doesn't believe me. That's her prerogative. Fine. I told her that I won't be staying at her house much longer and that I don't want David around my kid anymore. That we'll be keeping to ourselves for the rest of my short time here. She's letting me stay, surprisingly, but she said that she's glad to see me go. She swore up and down that David would never hurt Roman and that she was sad to see her relationship with me ruined over an accusation with no real basis. That I shouldn't let my self-destructive behavior and my bipolar paranoia get in the way of other people's happiness. And that I better not accuse her boyfriend of being a predator anymore. Essentially, she kept shifting the blame onto me, so I ended things there. Oh, and she told me that she wants reimbursement for things like clothing and grocery shopping, because apparently we're draining her wallet by buying so much food. I apologized and said that I would buy my son's groceries from now on. David came back from his church retreat Friday morning, which is when I confronted him. I was very upset, so I didn't go easy on him. He was thrown off by my hostility, but once he understood what I was implying, his demeanor shifted. Sit down, let's talk about it, he kept saying. Except he was the one who was nervous, and he looked like he was on the brink of a panic attack. I kept my composure. I asked him why he was in my son's room in the middle of the night with the door shut. He gave me the same excuse, that he was looking for his cell phone. I asked him why he couldn't have gotten the phone in the morning. He said that he set his alarm for 5 a.m. for work and that he didn't want it to go off with my son in the room and wake him up. I asked him why was he standing over my son's bed. He admitted that he was trying to wake him up and ask him if he'd seen his phone. But didn't he just say that he didn't want the alarm to wake him up? I asked him what on earth would compel him to think that it's okay to wake up my child in the middle of the night to help him look for a cell phone. He said that he wasn't thinking straight and that he was sorry. I asked him about the missing laundry as well. He adamantly denied what I was implying. He said that his and my sister's clothing get lost in the laundry all the time, that he would help me find my son's missing clothing, all while apologizing profusely. I'll admit, I was thrown off by how apologetic he was, and it made me a little soft. I thanked him for letting us stay in his house, and I apologized for not setting boundaries earlier. But I told him that from now on, I didn't feel comfortable with him being around my son. No more driving him places, buying him gifts, texting him, helping him with homework, doing his laundry, etc. I essentially told him that he's no longer allowed to be alone with my son or touch his things under any circumstances. He broke down in tears. He was hysterical. The thought of me believing that he's preying on my son made him miserable, that he would never do that. He said, "I love him like a father loves a son." When reading my original post, a lot of you believed the same thing at first, and so did I. Yeah, let me just stop here and say same thing, OP. I was trying to give the guy the benefit of the doubt because, you can't jump to an accusation that horrendous so quickly because it's life ruining. But once the evidence piled up, it's like, nah, man, the gloves are off. We can't be cautious anymore. This is a problem. So I just want to stop here, OP, and say don't blame yourself for trying to be cautious at first because I think that's human nature to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. OP continues, but I just don't like the way that David looks at him. Yeah, I see the kindness in his eyes towards my son as he helps him with homework or watches a show with him, but there's a nuance of something covetous and sinister that I can't shake off. Anyway, I told him that it's unhealthy for him to be so fixated on a child, and that he cannot depend on my kid for happiness. I told him that we'd be leaving his home very soon. I didn't tell him where or when it was happening. He asked if there was anything he could do to rectify the situation. He suggested that the four of us sit down and talk about it, but I declined. I reiterated that he is not allowed near my kid anymore and left it at that. A small part of me feels like I was too harsh on him overall, like maybe he was just looking for his phone. Maybe it's a coincidence that articles of clothing are missing. But he was on his knees, sobbing like I had just pulled the rug out from underneath him. All this for a kid that he hasn't even known for that long. I don't think that he was devastated that I'd accused him of being a predator. He was devastated that I had revoked his access to my child. I'm not stupid. I once witnessed this man argue with my sister. Brutal verbal assaults from both sides, which ended in my sister crying. This man didn't shed a tear. Okay, I'm sorry about the interruptions, but I just gotta stop here and point out something that I kind of feel like is really obvious, and I'm surprised that OP isn't pointing it out. If I invited a family member into my home and they stayed here with their kid, and suddenly that family member is accusing me of this type of inappropriate behavior towards their child, I would not want to keep these two people in my home. This accusation is the worst accusation someone could ever make towards a man. So if she made that accusation towards me and I was doing nothing wrong, I'd be like, yo, this is a problem. We need to cool things off, get out of my house, because if you think this is inappropriate, then I shouldn't be around your son. And I'm doing nothing wrong. I don't want to be around your son. So let's just separate. Let's part ways because I'm not doing this, and let's get you the hell out of my home, lady. Why would I ever want to keep them in my home? So she can keep accusing me and ruin my life with these life-destroying accusations? No way, man. There is no way I would let them stay in that house one more night. What I'm trying to say here is David's behavior doesn't really feel to me like the behavior of someone who's innocent. Am I wrong about this? Fellas, all the guys listening to this post, if a woman and her son come into your house and the woman accuses you of that, would you be like, hey, it's okay, why don't you stay a couple more weeks and we can hopefully work things out? Or would you be like, no, this is bad, let's nip this in the bud, get out of my home? Because I'd be like, get the hell out of my house today. Anyways, back to the story. Okay, OP finishes the post. It's a pretty long post saying OP's watching Roman like a hawk. She also purchased a nanny cam, and she's also looking into public housing and women's shelters. Then, about 1 week later, OP posted an update. I guess I'll start off by saying that my son and I weren't in the house much, up until Friday of this week. We'd been staying at a local motel that's decently close to a school and where I work. But since we left the house, things have sort of escalated a bit. David's number is blocked on Roman's phone, but David found my son on TikTok and Instagram on Monday night and messaged him there. Nothing explicit in the messages, just things like, "Did you block my number? I really miss talking to you. Is everything okay? Maybe in the future we can talk to each other again. I'm sorry if I upset you or your mom. Are you and your mom safe? Where are you staying? Respond to me when you get a moment. I have something important to tell you." Oh my god! You guys, what am I reading? That commentary that I just made about how I would kick the woman and her son out of my house if I were innocent in the situation, I'm really trying to think like, how would an innocent man act in this situation? And you know what an innocent man would not do? You know what he would never, ever do? Is secretly stalk the guy on social media and send him secret messages saying that he misses you. He also sent many more messages like that. Basically, just him begging my son for a conversation. I was livid when my son showed me. I think what set me off the most is that I know David messaged him because he thought my kid would respond without telling me. He thinks that they have some secret, private relationship right under my nose that I'm interfering with. I'm pretty sure that's why he hasn't kicked me out of his house. He's not mad, just miserable and desperate for some sort of contact. I feel like no matter how hard I pull my son away from David, he's refusing to let go. We blocked the Instagram and TikTok accounts immediately, and I screenshotted the messages. I asked Roman to delete his Snapchat account, just in case, but he didn't want to do that. I'm like 99% sure that he has a girl on there that he likes. I let that slide because he came straight to me about the other accounts, and he agreed not to add any new accounts on Snapchat or post anything that gave away our location for the time being. This entire ordeal has upset my son. He broke down in tears when he came back from school the next day. That hurt a lot to see. I don't know if I expressed this, but Roman genuinely liked David, and they got along well. Maybe my kids saw him as a father figure since he was shunned and neglected by my ex-husband. David's harassment spilled over to me too. He called me multiple times and texted me things like, "Let me know when you're back so we can resolve this. Am I allowed to attend Roman's baseball game on Thursday with you? I'd like to support him. Can you please answer? I'd really love to talk, just us. I'm sorry if I gave you both the wrong impression." I didn't block his number on my phone. I figured that the more he talked, the more likely he'd continue to incriminate himself and I could use his words against him. I didn't answer a single one of his questions, but I let him know that if he contacted my kid ever again, or if he showed up to his school or any events, that I would go straight to the police. This is the bad news, and I'll forewarn you that if you're easily triggered, please don't read any further. Well, OP added that disclaimer, so I guess I will put the disclaimer here. Also, my editor is going to put a timestamp after this moment, so if you want to skip the triggering parts, you can click that timestamp and fast forward into the future. I want to thank all of you for confirming my suspicions in the first post, because I found something heinous. I mentioned that I planned to set up a camera in Roman's room. I asked for his permission first, and he said that he didn't care since we're barely in the house anymore. The camera I chose is motion sensitive and links the footage to my iPhone so I can watch it anywhere. The camera was set up on Sunday night as soon as I received the package, and I hid it above the door frame so that it overlooked the entire room. You can't see it unless you use a ladder. I didn't get anything for a couple of days. On Wednesday evening, around 6 o'clock, David came into my son's room, stood there for a moment, and then left. No longer than a minute. An hour later, he returned and started going through his drawers. He picked up a specific garment and left within less than 2 minutes. I wanted to throw up. I didn't sleep that entire night at the motel. The following day, I had someone cover my shift, which gave me the opportunity to do a deep search of David's room while he was at work and my son was at school. I found the article of clothing inside of David's pillowcase on top of the pillow, right where he would lay his head to rest at night. Okay, I don't know what I expected, but I wasn't expecting that. I was so sick to my stomach that it took me almost 2 hours to confiscate that article of clothing and check it for evidence. I won't elaborate, but you can infer what I mean. I was nauseated the entire time. All I could do was put on gloves, throw it into a Ziploc bag, and shove it into my closet. I didn't want to look at it or even think about it. I still don't. That answers the question of why David was so insistent on doing my kids' laundry. Who knows how long this has been going on? I've been ruminating on the next steps to take. Besides my main priority, going to the cops, my other priority is telling my sister Sarah. We are obviously not on the best terms right now. She found out that I confronted her boyfriend last week, and she is livid. How dare I accuse him of grooming my son? Apparently, David is not the same man that he was after we left and returned to his old habits. He was back to going to bars with his friends every evening, and his drinking got worse. He stopped coming home early from work and dragged himself through the door at almost midnight, if he even bothered coming home, that is. And he was no longer affectionate towards my sister. Apparently, it's my fault that he's depressed again. If these aren't red flags, I don't know what is. I can't tell if she's in denial or if she can't actually see them. But what she's most concerned about is that David hasn't been home since Thursday. He went to work, came home briefly, then left again without telling her when he'd be back. In my head, that makes sense. He knows that either she or I took the garment that was inside of his pillowcase, and now he's afraid to come home. It confirms all of my suspicions. The rest of this post is kind of long, so I'll summarize. In the next paragraph, OP says that she wants to give proof to her sister about her boyfriend being a creep, but she's not sure how or when to do it. Also, OP got approved for public housing, so hopefully she'll have a place to stay soon. Then OP continues, I guess all I really have to say is I'm not sure how to go about providing the evidence I have to the police. When I give them what I have, they'll start some kind of investigation, right? I'm just nervous that I could get into trouble for the camera. And the messaging, that counts as harassment, right? Do I tell my sister everything before I go to the cops? Any advice you can give is welcome, because I've never been in a situation like this before, and I don't want to mess it up. Just because I'm leaving David's home doesn't mean that I'm letting David get away with what he's done. Man, this story really escalated quickly. OP, you were 100% right to leave David's home when you did. Who knows what would have happened if you had stayed in that house? Outside of that, OP, I would say stop beating around the bush and go to the cops immediately. Tell your sister too. Just rip off the band-aid and send her the video and email. That was r/drew off my chest, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day. Welcome to r/Am I the Bad Guy, where a wedding proposal goes horribly wrong. Will I be the bad guy if I tell my friend that her boyfriend is planning to propose? I'm a 27-year-old woman, and my best friend has been dating her boyfriend, who's 26, for over 5 years. A while back, he reached out to me to help figure out her ring size and to help set up so that he can make this the most magical day for her. Having known my friend for over 20 years, I know exactly how she wants her proposal to go and who she wants to be there. So I relayed all this information to her boyfriend months ago via text and over the phone. I even took the time to covertly find out which ring she would love the most. So a little background, my friend is incredibly family and friend oriented, and in the past has expressed to me on multiple occasions that in the 5 years they've been together, he hasn't really made much of an effort to indoctrinate himself into her family or friendships the way that she has for him. While I do generally like him, I've always felt that he's incredibly self-serving and self-focused. Recently, through a mutual friend, I found out that he started a group text between his emphasis on his friends and his family to set up a time and date of the proposal. He has not only excluded myself, but he's also completely excluded her family and other close friends from the event, despite the fact that, according to the screenshots I've seen, he's doing everything verbatim that I suggested he do. He's planning on only having his boys and family present for the occasion. And knowing my friend, this would ultimately break her heart not being able to share this moment with her loved ones. I got heated and called him. At first, he was dodging my questions. Then he just outright said, "This is my proposal, and I've spent enough time and money to choose how I do it. Just be happy for your friend. It's not like you're not coming to the wedding." This infuriated me, and to make matters worse, I ran into her mom and dad at the grocery store and subtly asked if they knew of any possibility that she was getting engaged. They were unaware, and I know for a fact that my friend has told him that he needs to ask her parents for their blessing. She's somewhat traditional. My friend wears her heart on her sleeve, and I can predict how this event will go down when she sees all of his close friends and family and none of hers. Considering her previous sentiments about his lack of interest in her family and life, she will 100% see this as being hurtful and selfish, and I know that she'll cry. To make matters worse, the location of the proposal is a whopping 30 minutes from her parents' home. I don't want to get involved in a fight or reveal the surprise, but on the other hand, I feel that I owe it to my lifelong friend to help her avoid being hurt and disappointed. Maybe even helping her rethink what her future would look like with someone who just doesn't really appreciate what she values in life. So, am I the bad guy if I tell my friend that her boyfriend is going to propose? OP, so I understand that you're coming from a place of love and concern, but at the end of the day, this is not your proposal. It's his proposal, and it's her proposal. So it's his proposal to mess up, or to get correct, whatever. So just please don't meddle. Don't meddle, man. It's not your relationship. Even if you are right, which you might be based on my understanding of your friend, it's just not your place to meddle. So take a step back and, hey, look at it this way. If you're right, then your friend will be probably anyways, because, you're wrong and she'll be happy and tearful and, oh, I'm so happy. So in both scenarios, OP, you're better off just not saying anything. Oh, we have an update. 9 days later, OP posted an update. To everyone who told me to keep my mouth shut, thank you. So on Saturday, the day of the proposal, I got a call from her boyfriend. He was screaming at me, blaming me for not showing up, even though I was uninvited, to the proposal with her parents because she was upset they weren't there. Wait, what? Blaming me for not showing up to the proposal with her parents because she was upset they weren't there. Buddy, you didn't invite them. What did you expect? I was effing slack-jawed. I told him I knew this would happen, and he says verbatim, "You just admitted you knew this would happen, so if you knew the whole time and you actually cared about her, then you would have invited them." Yo, what? I was gobsmacked and hung up on him. Not even an hour later, I got a call from her asking me to come to her parents. According to her, this is how the situation played out. He popped the question, she said yes, and the people he invited popped out of hiding. She was bombarded by 4 of his guy friends, his mom, dad, older brother, and his sister-in-law. His parents were holding a sign that read, "Welcome to the family, Mrs. His last name." And this is where things go downhill. I didn't know this before, but my friend doesn't want to change her last name, and she's told him that repeatedly since they got together. Oh my god! The tea! She's an only child from a Ukrainian family, and with everything going on with Ukraine in the last year, she's doubled down. When she saw the sign, she joked, "Mrs. your last name? I think you mean Mrs. my last name." Everyone went silent until his mom said, "Well, the ring is already engraved. No changing it now." She takes off the ring and sees Mrs. his last name engraved on the band. Then she asked if her parents were coming, and he gave every excuse. He didn't have their number, there were too many people there, he wanted to keep it private, and eventually he said, "This was my proposal to you, and now my family is your family. We can just send your parents the pictures later." Oh, jeez. She took off the ring and left. That's when I'm assuming I got the call from him. She went straight to her parents. She asked them about the engagement, and they were clueless. She then asked me if I knew anything. I asked her if she was in a safe place, and she said that she was, so I told her that I would answer any question she had, rather than just info dumping on her. She was upset, but thanked me. She was furious when I told her about the call from him earlier and said, "Does he really think that I'm that shallow?" She said that it was never about having a perfect proposal or her parents there. It was about him making the whole thing about himself as always, and she was done feeling ignored and belittled, so this was her breaking point. She's currently staying with her parents, and she's been receiving texts from him. The worst one so far is him telling her that she has to pay him back for the ring and for ruining his life. Right now, all I can do is be here for her, and whatever decision she makes, I will fully support, because as you've all helped me realize, this isn't about me, it's about her. Not my monkey, not my circus. Oh man, okay. OP, I just gotta say, what did you say here? I will fully support her because as you've all helped me realize, this isn't about me, it's about her. If only her fiance, well, her ex-boyfriend, I should say, had realized that exact same lesson. It's not about him, it's about her. That guy is incredibly self-obsessed, OP. You were right in the first post. It sounds like she dodged a bullet by recognizing the red flags, and it sounds like you dodged a bullet by not getting caught up in that drama. More than likely, if you had said something to your friend, then even if you would have been right, you would have either hidden the red flags so they would have popped up later, or you would have been blamed for the drama because if something went wrong, it would have been your fault. Man, I can't believe this guy has been dating her for what, 5 years, and he says, "But I don't know your parents' number. I don't know how to contact them." Wow, okay, this is a... this guy's a douchebag. Opie, I'm giving you a rock-solid 0 out of 5 buttholes. You've been a concerned, caring friend who wisely listened to the internet's advice. I'm giving the ex-boyfriend 2.5 out of 5 bad guys. Am I the bad guy for removing my daughter's bedroom door because she won't stop slamming it? I'm a 40-year-old woman and I have 3 kids. Maggie, a 14-year-old girl, Levi, a 12-year-old boy, and Charlie, a 10-year-old boy. Levi and Charlie share a bedroom, and Maggie has her own room as the oldest and also the only girl. Maggie's a great kid. She does her homework, helps with chores without too much complaint, and she doesn't bug her little brothers too much. The issue is that she will not stop slamming her bedroom door. When she gets up in the morning or goes to bed at night, she slams it. Pretty much any time she enters or exits her room, the door gets slammed. And she only does it with her bedroom door, not with any of the other doors in the house. It shakes the walls and frequently wakes up everyone else in the house. Her brother's room shares a wall with hers, and our bedroom is directly above theirs. We've talked to her about it and asked her very politely to please be more mindful about it because it's disturbing the rest of us, but it's in one ear and out the other. We've tried being more forceful about it, saying that if she continues to slam her door, there will start to be consequences. Still, nothing's changed. It all came to a head the other night when she got up to use the bathroom and all 4 of us were woken up by the slamming. I have to be up at 5 a.m. for work, and I've had enough of the broken sleep and came downstairs and knocked on her door. She opened it and said, "What?" with such attitude that it took a lot of self-control to not start yelling. I told her as calmly as I could that if she slammed that door one more time, she was going to come home and find it gone. She proceeded to yell at me to leave her alone and then slammed it 5 times as hard as she could. Well, the next day, Friday, she went to school, and my husband and I both had the day off, so we took the door off the frame and installed a curtain rod with a nice heavy curtain over for the door instead. She came home and completely freaked out. She said that we're being emotionally abusive and taking away her right to privacy. She sulked all weekend and won't talk to us now. My mother says that I'm the bad guy because I overreacted, but my mom doesn't have to deal with the house shaking. OP, as I was reading this story, I was all ready to give the commentary, "Well, OP, I'm definitely on your side, but a 14-year-old girl needs her privacy in a room with 2 younger brothers. So while I do agree that she needs consequences, it's probably not the best idea to take the door off of a 14-year-old girl's room." But then the curtain idea is so good, OP. Brilliant, genius, Because then you still punish her, you teach her that actions have consequences, but you don't steal the very important privacy for a 14-year-old girl who has 2 younger brothers who are going through puberty. So this is just round of applause, OP. The way you and your husband handled this is, in my opinion, perfect. Absolutely flawless. You get an easy, effortless, rock solid 0 out of 5 bad guys from me. I'm gonna give your daughter, let's say 1 out of 5 bad guys because, yeah, it's rude, but she's a 14-year-old girl. What can you expect out of a 14-year-old girl except drama and entitlements? That's just kind of how 14-year-olds are. And to all my 14-year-old listeners out there, I love each and every one of you. It just, come on, you gotta understand 14-year-olds are a little dramatic. I would say though, the one thing you have to do extra is figure out why she's slamming the door. Is it just because she wants to be rebellious? It's her like little act of, well, I can do what I want to do. Or is it because she thinks it's cool or she wants to wake people up? Like, you need to find the root cause so you can actually address that, OP. Am I the bad guy for calling my sister a coke whore? I'm an 18-year-old girl. I live with my parents and my sister, Joanne, who's 23. Joanne has a cocaine habit, and she claims it's normal in her job, and it's just the lifestyle of chefing, yada yada. Hold up, what? I've never in my life heard of this. Are chefs out there coked out of their minds? My parents seem to be ignoring it, since Joanne pays her rent on time and keeps to herself when she's in the house and doesn't cause many problems. I'm a college student on a government grant, and I'm in college Monday to Friday up until 5 to 6 p.m. Working isn't really an option for me right now, so I don't go out that much, and I spend all my money on college supplies. Joanne doesn't really seem to understand this, and is always asking to borrow money and whatnot. I always say no, because it works out that I only have 40 euros every week to spend on college stuff and travel to college. I got a Christmas bonus on my grant, and I ended up deciding to book tickets for a small local gig next week. I booked 2 tickets, one for me and one for my best friend because her birthday is the same day and she loves this type of music. It was meant to be a surprise for her. I told Joanne about this on one of her good days because I was genuinely excited to finally do something and live the college student lifestyle for one night. The tickets were digital on an account shared with my parents. Joanne asked them for the login, telling them she wanted to book tickets for something, but she was lying and used it to sell my tickets for drug money. I didn't find out until I'd gotten the email to confirm the tickets were sent to someone else, and I was really confused at first. I checked, and they were sent to someone that I know Joanne knows. I went straight to her when she got home and asked what the F she did, and she tried lying, but I showed her proof that it went to someone she knows, and I told her that I want my money back then and there. She told me that it was gone already. I lost my mind and started yelling at her because it wasn't fair. My mom had just gotten in from work, and I was screaming at my sister, who was crying at that point, saying she was sorry and she didn't know that it would upset me this much. My mom got involved and told me to keep my voice down and we'll talk about it, and I told her to shut up and stay out of it. I ended up saying something like, "Why is it fair that you get to do this to me when I've never even drank alcohol or smoked weed? Why does this coke whore get to be the golden child but not me?" My mom stepped in and put a stop to it then and there. My sister started screaming back at me for what I called her. My mom said that was out of line and she just made a mistake. I told my mom that her mistake cost me the only night out that I'll ever be able to have all year, so she should hear what I have to say about it. My mom thinks that I was in the wrong for what I said, and my sister won't even look at me, even though it's been 3 days and I've tried apologizing. Am I the bad guy? Okay, OP, you said Joanne has a cocaine habit. I think this is more like a cocaine addiction. I was thinking, as I was reading this, I was thinking, okay, she does cocaine, let's not get too judgmental, maybe she has it under control. As long as she's not stealing from family, I think things are okay. And then, inevitably, she steals from family. Personally, I think that's a sign that you've gone too far. And more than likely, OP, this is just the beginning, because she got away with it once and her mom backed her up, so what's stopping her from doing it again? Anyways, OP, Joanne is a thief and she has a problem, which I hope she's able to get worked out, but considering how her mom is enabling her, I'd be surprised if that happens. I'm giving you 0 out of 5 bad guys. I will agree that your response was pretty harsh, but considering that she just stole your money essentially and spent it on drugs, I think yelling at her is pretty fitting, to be honest. It's a bit extreme, but I'm not going to blame you for it, so you get 0 out of 5 bad guys. Joanne gets 2.5 out of 5 bad guys for the theft, and your mom also gets 2.5 out of 5 bad guys for enabling her daughter's drug addiction. Am I the bad guy for calling him an effing embarrassment? I've been seeing my fiance for 4 years now, and I came into the relationship with 2 boys. My boys are now 12 and 9. Once a year, me and the boys go to my family's vacation home with the entire family, and up until this year, my fiance didn't attend. But now we're engaged and merging families, so the family asked that he come too. They all get along great with him anyways. I explained to him prior to us coming to our family retreat that during our week stay with the family, my kids do not have a bedtime. We do a lot of nighttime activities, such as night swimming in the pool, karaoke, fires, nightly strolls through the neighborhood, etc. So during this week, my kids absolutely do not have a bedtime, and that's how it's always been. I made it clear that bedtime was not to be enforced like it was at home because this is vacation and time with family, and I'm not going to make my kids miss out on the nightly activities. I also explained that due to this, some nights they're up until easily 11 p.m. to midnight. It's once a year, it's no big deal. So my fiance was fully aware, and please note, this is the only time that I've seen this side of him. We get here the first night, and I can tell that he's already uncomfortable with the boys staying up past their bedtime. He was stressing out because the boys were still in the pool at 10 p.m., and he felt they should already be in bed. I reminded him at least twice that we're not enforcing a bedtime here, and he let it go the first night. On the second night, 9 p.m. rolls around and the boys were still up, and my fiance was dropping comments like, "You're lucky you're even still awake right now. You should be in bed." He said that right in front of my mom, who looked mortified that he had such an attitude. I told him to cut it out, in private. He said this is messed up and that it's going to be terrible trying to get them back onto their schedule, even though that's never been an issue in the years prior. I stood firm and told him to knock it off and let it go. But then, last night, my fiance starts angry sighing every single time he looks at my kids still awake. And I finally pulled him aside and told him that he was an effing embarrassment because he keeps saying these comments in front of my family, which leads to awkward silences and judgmental glances my way. I warned him prior to coming here that if he had an issue that he can't control for a week, then he needs to leave because he's ruining our trip with his passive-aggressive BS surrounding bedtime. He told me that I'm the bad guy for making him feel like garbage over wanting to keep the kids on a schedule because it's best for them. Am I the bad guy? Okay, so reading this story, I kind of have to ask myself, what's really the problem here? Is the problem that the kids aren't going to bed on time, or is the problem that he's losing control? My guess is that he's really upset about losing control. People in the comments are saying that his mask is slipping, and yeah, that kind of might be what's going on here. People are saying this is a red flag, and yeah, what we're seeing here is problematic behavior. It's just, I don't know if what we're seeing here quite crosses the line into like not marrying this guy territory. It's definitely a red flag. It's just as far as the terrible behavior that I see on this subreddit, this is relatively tame. So I'm going to give this guy 1.5 out of 5 bad guys because he's getting all huffy over no reason. I mean, what's the big deal? The kids stay up on vacation, so? I'm giving you 0 out of 5 bad guys, OP. I think the way you handled the situation is pretty much perfect. I just want to add, OP, you might want to reevaluate some things and keep an eye on this guy. That was r/Am I the A, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.
3 hours of the very best entitled parent stories from the past couple of months. Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into this. Poker night pickpocket. Let's set the scene. I have about 4 really good friends, who in turn have a small handful of friends themselves, all of whom love online poker. On occasion, we've been known to play together using Plato, and usually I rule. I love poker. It's the closest thing I get to normal human interaction that doesn't take place in my work office. One particularly spirited game, somebody suggested we get together for a normal poker night, since we all live in the same city, just scattered about. I didn't really want that, as I can really be myself in online chats, but I'm very close off in person, more so when there's a lot of people. but we agreed that whoever won the night that night would decide if we did an in-person group game, and I lost. Fair is fair, I agreed to go, despite not really wanting to, since we laid down some ground rules. 1. No drinking. We don't need anyone getting salty over losing in person. 2. No children. Kids give me really bad anxiety. And 3. Only bring cash to the table that you're comfortable losing. The rules seemed good, I was happy, even if I didn't want to go. Poker night shows up and I go, and 3 people brought their kids. I tried to point out that it's in the rules, but the people of the group agreed in that moment that because getting a babysitter would have been too much of a hassle, the kids could just play in the living room while we were in the dining room. I didn't like the agreement, but I didn't want to bail on my friends. I went to put my bag in the front hall closet, and to keep me from trying to check my account balance so I wouldn't try to bring more money to the table, I put my phone and my wallet in my backpack. The night was okay. One by one, people lost their shirts, metaphorically, and when they were tapped, they left for the night. I at least managed to stay in the game a while, but when my turn came, I went to check my phone for texts and found my backpack open in the hall closet, and on the floor, my wallet had been emptied of all cash. My credit card was gone as well, and my phone was nowhere to be seen. I didn't want to accuse anyone of anything, so I had my friend call it, and at first it rang, but nobody heard it. After that, every time it rang, it went straight to voicemail, meaning somebody turned it off. That night when I got home, I checked Google Maps to see where my phone was last seen, and I saw a trail that led to a house on the other side of town. I went to the house and knocked on the door, and to my surprise, one of the people who had brought their kid over to poker night stood there. She seemed surprised to see me, so I asked her if she'd picked up an extra phone by accident at the party. I didn't want to make her think I was accusing her of anything. Now, she said that she hadn't, and that on its own didn't sit right with me. So I told her that my phone had last been pinned to be at her house because of the GPS on it. She started getting aggressive and told me she wouldn't be harassed and slammed the door in my face. I sat in my car for a moment and tried to debate what to do next, when a cop car pulled up and told me that I was trespassing and being accused of harassment. I couldn't believe this, I told the officer, but he didn't seem remotely fazed and told me that if I had a complaint, I can file a report. So I did. That same day, I went to the police station with my laptop and showed them the proof of where my phone was last pinged, about seeing that woman and her kid at poker night, and about my missing credit card. I was told that it would be taken into review, but the very next day, I was emailed to go and get my phone and credit card at the police station, but all the cash in my wallet was gone. It turns out, the entitled kid that had stolen my stuff had started bragging to his friends about how he got away with stealing a bunch of stuff from the party, including my phone. Luckily, another kid had a spine and told his parents, who went to go and confront the mother as the other officers were showing up to investigate. You know what? That's really quite sad, isn't it? Something that should have been such a fun night, you know, playing poker with your pals in real life, something that you should be able to enjoy, right? But no. Ruined. What I would love to know is how much this woman actually knew about what her kid did and what they stole, because as you say, and I'm inclined to agree, like the fact that she was like, don't harass me, get away, it's a little bit fishy, I will say. And realistically, the only reason why this came out is because the kid was bragging to his friends and other parents or something about it. If they hadn't done that, then this mum probably would have just kept up the act and said, I've got no idea, you're not allowed in my house, etc. What is she doing? Has she set her kid up to go and steal things at this poker night? I have no idea, but it's very, very snaky, that's for sure. Hopefully there are repercussions, because if you could find some sort of evidence that said that the mum explicitly told her kid to do this, then it wouldn't really be the kid's fault anymore, and the mum would actually probably face some charges. And that's what we all want at the end of the day. Entitled Aunt and her Christian songs. I want to open this off with a statement that I have nothing against people of religious faith. I understand that our ideals do not align, and I respect that. Now, with that out of the way, I want to tell you all about an unpleasant trait my aunt has that bothers not just me, but also my neighbors. My aunt has recently been resurfacing her faith into the Lord. She is a Roman Catholic. She recently hit a rough patch in her life and has found solace again in religion, and she won't hesitate to let you know. She'd tell you about how she cries every time in worship, how she'd always somehow work her faith into the most absurd of topics. We generally seem to get along, aside from one altercation where she expressed disgust towards my sexuality. But other than that, she treats me well and at the end respects me as a person. Well, respects in the sense that she at least has the decency to hide her distaste. She is generally a very nice person and has little to no beef with anyone in her life. That is except for how she chooses to continue her faith. Aside from the aforementioned constant mentioning, another way she'll let you know is by playing loud variations of praise and worship hill songs. She played these songs even in the dead of night where everyone would normally be asleep. she'd have Christian rock in the background playing. Granted, I don't fully understand why she does this, but I also know that you really shouldn't do this when almost everyone in the neighborhood unanimously agrees that you should maybe tone it down a bit. Once I asked her if she could, but she got a bit touchy and asked me if I even understood God at all. The point is I don't, but it's irritating having the same old song over and over again. It also doesn't help that it wasn't exactly the genre that I was into. I once turned down her music, and she turned a meaningful argument into a rant about how I don't appreciate the things she does for me. My parents are practically non-existent anymore. We've been living with her since their falling out. Yes, she does provide for the house. I also do try to chip in with the work regularly and carry mine and my sister's weight every now and then. But back to the music thing. We'd be kept awake each night with "Thank You Lord" and variations of such. And if that's not the case, when I do schoolwork at home, it was hard for me to focus. She wouldn't turn it down, not out of spite, but she really legitimately just didn't want to. I want to set up an intervention with her and my grandparents soon to get this thing out of the way. It's also probably worth mentioning that we'd never gotten a single noise complaint ever, just slightly annoyed neighbors irritably knocking on our door. I'm not sure she's that nice, but I digress. Yeah, this one is actually just crazy. I'm sorry. I don't really care if you're religious or you're not, how you practice, what your beliefs are. Like, it's actually so unimportant to me. I couldn't care less. You do what makes you happy and what you believe in. That's absolutely fine. However, when it starts impacting other people to this extent and you can't turn your music down in the middle of the night, then that is way too far. And it's got nothing to do with religion. I'm sorry. That's just you being a butt. Everyone has a right to their belief. Don't get me wrong. But if that belief then intrudes on everyone else and annoys everyone, then that's a little bit too far, I'm sorry. And also, like, I don't know too much about, what religion is this again? Roman Catholicism. But surely there are bits in the Bible or, you know, parts of this woman's religion that she practices and believes in that say that you have to be kind or treat other people well, or just you can't play Christian rock music in the middle of the night. That's got to be in there somewhere. Like, if there are some commandments, number 9, you can't play bad music in the middle of the night. I reckon it's in there, and quite frankly, you can't tell me otherwise. So there we go. Entitled Mother tried to steal my tablet, so I went from 0 to 100 to make her back off. First time poster here, and I'm still in awe about the audacity of some people. I've read about entitled people, but outside of my school, I've never been in contact with any of them long enough to deal with them. That was until recently. I am a 33-year-old man, and I'm an ELA teacher based in China for the last 3.5 years. First, a little bit of information before I get to the story. There's a bit of a pay gap between foreign and Chinese teachers. This is a well-known fact, but only the most opportunistic people like to capitalize on it from time to time, if you're not careful. It could be anything from charging more at stands to, on the rarest of rare occasions, guilting us into complying. Trust me, it's happened, and those select few people are not apologetic about it. Now, onto the story. It was Chinese New Year, and I was on the train to Chongqing to visit a friend. I don't like flying, and I really like trains. Now, I had my Samsung Tab S8 Plus and was watching Final Fantasy VII Advent Children with Bluetooth. Suddenly, I felt something nudging against me. I looked to see a kid, maybe in elementary, trying to look at my movie. So I turned off my Bluetooth and turned the tablet to him so that he could watch as well. Yeah, that sounds weird, but being a teacher here, you get used to it. Anyway, he was really immersed, and though I couldn't understand him, I could tell that he was enjoying it a lot. He was trying to talk to me, but his English wasn't so good, and my Chinese was worse. So he opted for, "I like this, so cool, me too," and things like that. Very basic English. He was a sweet kid, and he got to watch the whole thing before our stop. He even said Chongqing, and I said, "Me too." He waved goodbye and ran back to his mum, and I began to pack my things so I could get off. Then it happened. A woman approached me with the kid, and in perfect English, demanded my tablet. She literally said, "Give me your tablets." I thought I was in Twilight Zone, and I wanted to ensure I heard her correctly. "Excuse me? Give me your tablet. I want my son to have it." I refused, a simple no, and she said those magic words that I'd begun hating to hear. "But you're a foreigner. You can just buy another one." Now, a couple of things. One, I don't know if the kid really wanted my tablet or not, and frankly, I didn't care. And two, I come from a family that has taught me to never let anyone make you feel less than others. If somebody tries to take my dignity, it's not going to end well for that person. And no, I don't actually have to fight to get my point across. Fair warning, I'm paraphrasing the confrontation because it lasted a lot longer than I cared for. I said, "No, I can't. I have to save to buy this. You could do the same." "No, you can give me yours and stop being selfish." Again, I countered. "Or you can stop being an entitled female dog and buy your own." It was my first time seeing a shocked Pikachu face, and to rub salt in the wound, I added, shoo shoo. She did go away, only to come back with the police. Now that I should have seen coming, but I didn't because I was focused on getting off the train. Lucky for me, the policeman also spoke English with great fluency. He was also really polite and obviously not in the mood for any of this. Sir, this woman says that you stole her tablets. I saw the woman behind him with a triumphant smirk while speaking Chinese. I let out a sigh. I'd already wasted enough time on this nonsense. So I did what I always did when I wanted to get my point across in the quickest way possible. I turn cold. In fact, my students refer to it as me turning into Bing Aoshi, ice teacher. I looked at the police officer and said, I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to use my fingerprint to unlock this tablet. If it doesn't work, she can have it. If it does work, I get to bash her face in. Wow. That woman's Pikachu face came back so fast that the officer even had a shocked look. He asked me if I was serious, and I said, definitely. I guess the woman saw my face and tried to backpedal, but I wasn't going to let her go until I made my points. When she tried to leave, I said, where are you going? I thought you said this was yours. The woman looked to the police for help, but as I said, he was not in the mood. She said something in Chinese to the man, only for the man to give a short reply. I guess he wasn't going to entertain this and made sure I didn't hit her. How dare you? You had the nerve to try and take something that's mine because I'm a foreigner? You're disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. The woman had a mixture of fear, shock, and anger on her face when I finally asked, is this your tablet? When the woman said no, I leaned my head in towards her and barked, what was that? She finally said that the tablet was mine before taking her kid and leaving. The kid did wave goodbye to me, despite his mother's objections, and I smiled and waved back. The officer asked me if I was serious about hurting her, and I told him the truth. I wouldn't have hit a woman over an object. He laughed and wished me a happy Chinese New Year. I told my friend about this and we had a good laugh. Well, OP, when you said at the start of this story that often locals, pick on or choose to go after foreigners because they know they're more wealthy or earn more from their job, I didn't think it would be like this. I didn't think it would be actually trying to steal or at least get for free their technology products. That is a new level. Again, as I always say, whenever I read stories like this involving a kid that's pretty innocent, having a great time, and then their entitled parent that is like this, I really hope that they grow up and don't become like their parent because, we've seen it too many times before. What can happen to a very innocent young kid just enjoying a program on an iPad and then it gets ruined by their mother. Sad, but it is the way that the world works. Wow, OP's actually just put a little edit in the comments, and they actually say that their colleague at work saw this post and told OP that he got lucky because according to him, some cops would arrest foreigners just for making threats to Chinese locals. He told OP that he's seen cops force foreigners to give their possessions to liars without getting them back despite reporting them. Sure, they get in trouble, but you're still without your possessions. Wow. I've got to say that this police officer in this story acted pretty well. Like, that is exactly how you'd want a police officer to act, pretty impartial, just, hey, what's going on here? Sort it out. Nice. But hearing stories about that, goodness me, sounds like you did get lucky, and that's kind of worrying, let's be realistic. Entitled SOB Colleague drinks from my personal mug. This happened 10 years ago, and all names have been changed. My name for this story is Larissa, which is not my real name. I used to work for a money exchange company with a front store and office in the heart of the city centre. The store had 4 stories, and we'd often host training sessions there. Because of this, we had company branded mugs, and us in-store staff had our own mugs. Now, I noticed that people would use my personal mug despite the amount of company mugs available. I don't like sharing my mug with people, but I will with people that I'm close to. But I do not with those I don't know. I don't know their hygiene levels, and it stresses my inner germaphobe out. I remember seeing a visiting member of staff drinking from my cup once, and they just shrugged and said it was clean and there, so they used it. Rude, but okay. I moaned about it to my gorgeous, caring friend, who for my birthday made me a one-of-a-kind mug especially for me. She probably got tired of me complaining about it. So I bring my new mug into work and return my other generic one back home. There is no way that anyone could mistake this as available for public use, right? Wrong. Q Tom, not his real name. He was a blonde, cocky SOB who had to be the loudest in the room and was such an attention seeker. Those big buckle types, always talking about how detailed oriented he was, blah, blah, blah. I came into the staff room one day and found out that he was visiting. I left as it was a bit too crowded. When I left, Tom was rifling through the cupboards. At this point, we'd moved all in-house staff mugs to a separate cupboard to avoid issues, as this had caused friction before. There were about 30 company-branded mugs, so no reason for anyone to use personal mugs. I returned later and noticed that he'd once again used my mug. The staff room was quieter, but still busy, maybe 10 people or so, including Tom and I. This awkward interaction followed. "Hey, are all the company mugs being used?" "No," said Tom. "Okay, so why are you using one of the personal mugs?" "It was the first mug I grabbed." This was most likely a lie, but I couldn't prove it. "Just use one of the company mugs. Those are ours for our personal use. We bought them from home." "But these are company cupboards, so I don't see what the issue is. I came in and I grabbed a mug." "Okay, but we have company logo mugs for a reason. Use one of those and put that one back." At this point, I was angry. Tom, with a cocky grin on his face, takes another sip from my mug and says, "I don't know what your issue is. It's not like the mug has your name on it." Actually, I think you'll find it does." I point at the mug. Tom's actually baffled by this. "Oh wow, I thought he was being sarcastic." "What do you mean?" No, it literally has my name on it. Look. I point at the mug and in huge red lettering it says Larissa. This is where it got very interesting. One of my colleagues started laughing. They know why I got that mug, because it's happened to me so many times before, hence my name's on it. Tom's face then went red, like tomato red, and you could see him sweating from embarrassment. "Serves him right for trying to be a condescending SOB. "I'm not quite sure how you missed it," I said, "considering you're so detailed-oriented. The writing is huge and in red. Please, pour your drink into another mug. I'd like a cup of tea and I want to use my mug." I've never seen anyone pour a drink and hightail it out of somewhere so fast. What made it worse is that afterwards, everyone in the company somehow found out and people started making jokes about hiding their stuff. They did this because he would do this everywhere he went, drink from someone else's mug on purpose and claim it was an accident. I only found this out afterwards when news of the incident did the rounds. The fact is, his cockiness made me want to expose him. It also made him look like an idiot. Going forward, he only ever drank from company logo mugs, but someone always reminded him of this incident. See, I actually can't work out what's more dumb here, guys. The fact that this person, Big Tom, didn't realize that your name was on the mug that he was drinking out of, or the fact that he's drinking out of it in the first place. But as I said during that story, I thought he was being sarcastic when he said, "What do you mean?" If the letters Larissa are just on the mug and he's not seen it. But no, apparently not. He actually just hadn't seen the name Larissa on a mug. I don't know. He might just be a very simple human that can't read. And Tom, if you are watching or listening, my friend, and that is you, then I'm sorry. And it also means that you won't be able to know what word I'm holding up on screen right now. And there it is. Steve-O, please don't do me dirty there. Please, my friend, please. Entitled father wanted to benefit from killing my mother. It's been 1 year, 4 months, 1 week, and 4 days since my mum passed due to COVID. Even sharing this now, I'm having a hard time, but I'm hoping that letting it out will help with grieving. When she first tested positive while working at the VA Northern California healthcare system in Oakland, I told my father to take my mum to be seen by a doctor and to get her help. She passed away 8 days later. She never told us how bad it was, just for us to stay away so we don't get COVID from her. My father is a Navy veteran, medically and mentally ill, and he's a Trump supporter who drank bleach literally. He threatened to divorce her if she got vaccinated with the mark of the beast and adamantly told his children that we will all die from the vaccine. During her last days, she'd reached out to my father's siblings to beg them for help, convincing him to take her to the hospital or for them to take her. The morning before she passed, his sister was able to convince him to take her. She lost consciousness when she arrived and was immediately admitted to the ICU. She passed away a couple of hours later on the 9th of October 2021 at 12:28 p.m. in room 242, ICU 2H4. How terribly sad. I'm so sorry for your loss, OP. I contacted the funeral home to make arrangements, gave my apartment to my youngest sister, and moved back in to take care of my father. I then arranged and coordinated to have a funeral in America and her home country simultaneously, so that her family who weren't able to come to America could still attend. My aunts deserved to see their sister buried. That was non-negotiable. My mum's friends started a GoFundMe, which funded her celebration of life both in America and in her home country. My father has a lot of health and mental issues. My mum was his primary caregiver. When I moved in, I took care of him physically, mentally, and financially. I made sure he ate, took his meds, didn't shoot himself with my mum's guns that he made her buy because he couldn't qualify to get his own, and paid all of our family bills. That's food, gas, mortgage, car notes, electricity, water, cell phone bills, just to name a few. I also financed our youngest sister's living and school expenses while she finished nursing school, all while I'm trying to maintain my own bills and household. During that time, my father felt more entitled than he already did. He wanted to tell me what to do, but admits that he doesn't know what he's doing when I do exactly what he says to show him it won't work or doesn't work that way. He also wanted me to pay for everything by myself, while he had over $5,000 in income every month on top of what my parents had in savings for a rainy day, which was substantial. There were several straws that broke the camel's back per se. Aside from wanting me to do as I'm told, but wanting me to take care of everything he's unable to in his grief, he kept pushing the issue of cutting off my youngest sister. He insisted that she is an adult and should be able to take care of herself if she would have made better decisions. This coming from the same adult who's not able to take care of himself due to long-term alcohol abuse. I've tried over and over again to explain that our mum was generous enough to have supported my brother and I, and that we wouldn't be where we are in life without her support. Because my sister is much younger than us, she did not get the opportunity to receive the same amount of support that we did, and she deserves to. She wasn't working at the time, and only had several months left of nursing school before graduating. I'm very proud of her. The next straw that broke the camel's back was when I had asked to transition from me paying all of his bills to using his own income to pay for his own bills, instead of just hoarding as much as he could. That's when everything went downhill fast. He argued that I'd have money if I didn't support my sister. I argued that he has his own money to use that he's not currently using while I pay for everything. He said he'd pay me back if I give him an itemized list of bills that I paid for, which I gave him a copy of several times, but I never saw a dime. Not that I was expecting anything, I just wanted to give him what he asked for so he couldn't say that I didn't. I told him I couldn't continue supporting him and that I needed help paying their bills. He asked about the GoFundMe donation and told me to use that to continue paying for everything. I tried explaining to him how much was donated and how much was spent on funeral expenses. He exploded. We were at the top of the stairs when he started yelling inches from my face that the donations were for him and that I had no right to use it. And in his rage, he almost hit me like he used to do frequently when I was a child. He forgot that I was an adult now and that he's not as strong as he used to be. Short of me throwing him off the balcony, my now husband stepped in to remind my father that there was no way in heck he'd sit back and watch him hit or beat me like he wanted to. We moved out days later. That same month, he reported to the bank that my mum has passed and they closed her accounts. He then called the police to report that I cleaned out her accounts before closing them and stole thousands of dollars. After a long investigation by the police, they had the bank explain to him that the accounts were closed by him when he reported that she'd passed and that they've sent out a check to him in the amount of what was in all of the accounts. He then reported my car that was under his name stolen. After yet another long investigation, the police concluded with video and testimonial evidence from the dealership that the car was not stolen and that he'd bought the car with the intention of having me drive it. Shortly after, I got into a car accident, unrelated, that totaled the car, which he got a check for from the insurance company because it was under his name. I've since bought my own car without his help in any way, shape or form. When none of his police reports panned out, he resorted to calling my job to have me fired. He told them I was using drugs. I worked with special education students and was routinely drug tested. When he started showing up to the school, I was let go because he's made it an unsafe situation for any students to be exposed to. He then started showing up to my apartment to break into my car and leave things on my front door to let me know he came by. He attempted to break in once, but my dogs prevented him from entering intact. We've since moved to another city and he no longer knows where we live. I've cut off all communications with him. I've since gotten married and given birth. Family members and my mum's friends keep asking if my father has met my child or if he knows he's a grandfather. My mum shouldn't have allowed an abusive alcoholic around her children. I will not allow him to be around mine. Oh my goodness me, what a sad start to this episode. I just feel like completely devoid of everything when I read stories like this. Just so tragic to think that your mum's life, I don't even want to say is likely to have been saved, is very likely to have been saved if she'd gone to hospital as soon as she started feeling poorly. We've seen the stats. right? I'm sorry, we have. If you get to a hospital and you have COVID, even back then, your chances of survival were obviously way more increased than if you didn't go. And it's your own dad's negligence that has stopped your mum from being around right now. And look, I get it. He has some issues. Fine. Everyone's got issues. It doesn't mean you stop someone who is really horribly ill from going to hospital. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. That's not an excuse. I will say that it's great to hear that now things are going well for you and you have your own family and you've cut that horrific man off. However, I can't get over the fact that your dad has literally killed your mother and you're going to have to live with that forever. It's so sad. Best of luck to you and your family in the rest of your life. Now for our next entitled parent story, and unfortunately guys, this one is not much better than the first. My mother-in-law tried to stop my wife's life-saving treatments. Allow me to introduce you to my late mother-in-law. I'll call her Carol for the sake of variety. Though I've heard many stories about her, for the most part I'll stick with things that I witnessed myself. There are enough of them. I don't think Carol ever met a new age concept that she didn't like. Her express goal was to synthesize all religion, science, and mysticism into a unified whole. All of it. To this end, she amassed a large collection of books and stranger objects from her travels, with a special focus on healing. Her library had volumes about vibration manipulation, curative trampolining, homeopathic color therapy, and on and on. I'm not joking or exaggerating here. Her shelves had lots of admittedly pretty mineral crystals, along with bottles of magic goddess essence water, evaporated away, and bogus radon protectors powered by diagrams of geometric figures. Her favorite book, based on the number of annotations and sticky notes, was hundreds of pages of word salad about spiritual beings from the star Arcturus. That's Arcturus spelled with an H because of an H bar, which is Planck's constant from physics. Except that Planck's constant is denoted by H, and H bar is H, the reduced Planck's constant. It's important to get these details right when you're dealing with spiritual beings, guys. Her pentagonal home was custom built around an energy vortex that she discovered in the coastal peaks of British Columbia. What an intro. Off the rip, let's just say this. This woman sounds interesting. Right then, Carol's parenting was, how shall I put this, more darkly eccentric. She was physically and emotionally abusive to her children. Well, all the fun and weird stuff lasted for about 2 seconds. One still has some pencil lead embedded in his hand from when she stabbed him because she wasn't satisfied with his piano practice. She attacked one with a kitchen knife. She started shaming her daughter, later my wife, as soon as she grew breasts, for growing breasts. So she forced her daughter to wear 2 large bathing suits with the apparent intention of making said breasts look smaller by contrast, but with the actual effect that there were wardrobe malfunctions. She was ashamed that her daughter went into medicine and became a noted specialist, rather than supporting her own non-traditional medical work. I wonder why her daughter went into medicine. You know, science. I really wonder why. My wife got the heck out at age 17 and moved across the country to go to university. For most of the time after that, she went relatively low contact. Again, I really wonder why. A decade ago, my wife suffered from a surgical error, which resulted in abdominal sepsis, and asked me to call her mother. That made me understand just how deathly serious the situation was. I was the call in the family for what might be the last time. I hadn't grasped that her life was truly at risk until that point. Nothing less would have induced her to try to get her mother to visit. To her credit, Carol hurried out for what was supposed to be a couple of weeks. It was expected that in that time, my wife would either be dead or on the road to recovery. Carol stayed in our home, and at first things didn't go too badly. For the most part, we just didn't talk about the treatments that my wife was undergoing. Carol did, though, express concern about the antibiotics that were being given, since according to her own views, antibiotics did nothing but harm. But a couple of weeks stretched into a couple of months, and Carol became harder to live with. She was angry when I stroked my wife's hair with my hand because I was blocking the energy from her chakra. She started blaming me for having somehow caused the nausea that the botched surgery was supposed to cure. I drove her out to pick up a magical concoction of essential oils on the condition that she check with one of the doctors before applying them. I pointed out that if the mixture had the power to heal, then it also had the power to cause harm, which Carol denied. When we got back to the hospital, I nabbed one of the residents when we reached my wife's floor to ask about that. Carol became furious about it and was clear that she had no intention of talking with the doctors. At home, she became more abusive to me. She was claiming that I was abusing my wife by not letting her have her things in the house. At that point, I lost my temper. That's the first time that I'd yelled at a person in literally a couple of decades. I told her that almost everything in sight was actually her daughter's, displacing my stuff. The sofas, the piano, tables and chairs, the bookshelves, and the electronics. The shelves for the CDs and DVDs were mine, but half the contents were hers. Carol wanted to know if I would be continuing the herbal remedies after she left, and I told her that that was up to my wife. I'd continue them if she wanted, I'd stop them if she preferred. Carol screamed that I was abusing my wife by following her own wishes rather than her mother's. On the night before Carol was finally supposed to be heading out, I was restless. That particular nightmare was about to end, but my wife was still quite ill. I got to thinking about that essential oil mixture, which included both oil of cloves and oil of cinnamon. Those are both strongly irritating if left on the skin, and Carol had been painting my wife's feet with the stuff. Her feet were, apparently, the correct energy points to draw out the infection. I went online and found the manufacturer's instructions, which specified that the oil needed to be significantly diluted with some neutral oil if it was going to be applied to the skin. Carol hadn't even been using the stuff properly. Well, that explained why the skin on my wife's feet was yellow and starting to peel. But Carol was furious when I calmly pointed out the problems that she was creating out of ignorance. A few days after Carol left, my wife took a turn for the worse and had to go back into the intensive care unit. And I dreaded the phone call that I had to make. Not because of the bad news, but because I anticipated how Carol would react. And she didn't disappoint. If you really loved her, you'd put her back onto the herbal oil and stop the antibiotics. You know perfectly well they don't do a dang lick of good. At which point I hung up. I had other things to worry about. My wife pulled through after months in hospital and 3 stays in ICU. She's still in poor health. I told her that I was putting my foot down. Under no circumstances was her mother welcome under my roof again. She'd grossly abused her privilege as a house guest. I didn't care about the family custom that family members were always welcome to stay as guests. I would not stay under the same roof as her mother. Having heard my stories and based on her own experiences, my wife agreed. A few years ago, Carol died, much as she had lived. She was diagnosed with metastasized lung cancer. Although she did undergo some real medical therapies, she relied mostly on her quack remedies. Paw twig powder, whey protein immune boosters, and the like. The usual stuff that ethics-free swindlers pawn off on desperate sufferers. She firmly believed that all the little white spots on her lung x-rays were a good sign and that her rapid weight loss indicated that her boosters were draining the cancer away. If there's some existence after death, I hope she came to appreciate all of the harm that she did in life. Except, a couple of nights after she passed away, I was driving from the hospital back to the Energy Vortex house. The rental's car navigation device suggested a shorter route than I'd taken to get there. But that route turned into a back road, into a rough road in the hills, into a track through the forest, and in pitch darkness apart from my headlights, over a rocky bump and directly into a tree trunk. Luckily, I was traveling slowly and I stopped in time. As I paused, shaken, I got to wondering if there might be something to Carol's worldview after all, and if her vengeful spirit might have possessed the GPS device, making one last try at killing me. And there we go. To be honest, guys, stories like this, as much as they are kind of fun a little bit, and like it's funny to laugh at someone like Carol because she is so stupid, it does make me feel a little bit sick, because I don't mind you as an individual believing whatever you want about anything, to be fair, as long as it doesn't harm someone else. You can believe that I'm an elephant if that's what you want to believe, but if it starts to harm me, then I am no longer an elephant. I am Jack. And yeah, look, I get it, not the best analogy, but I hope that at least one of you gets what I'm saying. The point being, if you want to do some silly essential oil stuff, and I'm sorry, it is silly, then you go ahead. If you want to do little rituals that make you happy, that's fine. But the moment you start rubbing essential oils into your dying daughter's feet, that is when it gets to me. That is when it's no longer funny. Unless you're doing it for OnlyFans and I'm paying. Then I can allow it. But all jokes aside, seriously, if you're doing something for yourself, that's fine. But when it comes to serious things like death and cancer and all that sort of rubbish, sorry, but if you're not going to go through the proper processes, that's your own fault. Deep, but true. My aunt stole my inheritance. Then karma struck, and her life fell apart. My aunt was one of 2 kids my grandparents had. My mother was the polar opposite to my aunt. She worked from the age of 12 in my grandfather's shop. never asked for anything, and eventually managed to start her own business. My aunt never held down a job until the age of 26. She was constantly stealing from her parents and was constantly in trouble. Despite this, my aunt was spoiled by my grandmother, and so were her kids. She had 3 kids from 3 different men, and her first husband was not one of them, if you know what I mean. It didn't matter what my aunt or her kids did, my grandmother would always jump to their defense. She never had time for my mum and her kids unless it was to get something from us. The only reason my mum would visit her was because she loved my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 2004, and a few months after, my nan decided to write up a new will. My mother and my aunt were both present for it when she signed it, so they knew what was in it. It made it so that when she passed away, her home would be sold, and the money split 25% each to my mum and aunt, and the remaining 50% would go evenly to the grandkids. At the time, the home was worth more than £500,000, so it would be a nice little inheritance, but nothing life-changing. In 2010, my mum died after an accident and did not have a current will in place. As she no longer had her business and was renting a house, she didn't have anything of much monetary value. The only thing she was concerned about was what would be done at her funeral should she pass away. But she told me everything she wanted. The music, the flowers, the coffin colour, and even what people were to wear at the funeral. She wanted people to wear bright, warm colours. So when she passed, my aunt and nan took over all the arrangements and tried to undo all the things I told them. The songs were going to be songs I knew mum didn't like. The flowers were all the wrong colours, and they picked a hideous coffin. With the help of my siblings, we were able to change a few of the things back to what they were supposed to be. But the coffin couldn't be changed for some reason, and my nan refused to let people come dressed as clowns, so it was all black. It was frustrating. After the funeral, my nan had her will changed. My siblings and I were told by our aunt that she didn't have any involvement with the writing of the will, and our nan told us that she changed it so that mum's share would go to her kids instead. All good, we thought. After mum passed away, my nan just stopped talking about my mum. At first, we thought it was because she was still recovering from losing her daughter, but even 5 years after mum passed, she still wouldn't talk about her. Even if you brought up a story about my mum, Nan would very obviously try and change the subject, usually about how hard my aunt and her trashy kids had it. And if you went to talk about your own problems, she would somehow bring it back to my aunt. I suffered a mental breakdown after my mum's death, so you can imagine how much it hurt to hear, well, X has had it so much worse. In 2016, my nan passed away. She'd written down what she wanted to be done for her funeral, and it was basically all the same things that she'd picked out for my mum's funeral, even the music to be played. I don't know why she tried to have a dress rehearsal funeral using my mum as the stand-in, but it was obvious that that's what she was trying to do. So after a couple of months, our siblings and I were waiting to hear about the will reading, and my aunt kept telling me, oh, it will be another month before we can do the reading. I didn't mind. I wasn't fussed about the money, to be honest. But my oldest brother was hoping to use the money to pay for a honeymoon for him and his then fiancée, and my younger brother was about to start uni, so it would have been one heck of a help. Eventually, my dad bumped into the solicitor my grandmother had used to deal with her will, and asked what was happening. The solicitor let slip that the will had already been read, and that it left everything to my aunt. When my dad questioned this, the solicitor told him that my aunt had been present when the will was written, despite promising that she had nothing to do with it. When confronted, my aunt initially tried to deny, but eventually admitted to lying to all of us. She showed us the will, and it confirmed what we already knew. The house and all its contents were now my aunt's. This included my granddad's war medals he fought in the Second World War. When I told her that he'd promised them to me before he died, she said, well, unless you have it in writing, you will have nothing in this house. Anyway, I already gave them to Clive. My heart sank. Clive, not his real name obviously, was her eldest son, and the dictionary definition of a screw-up. He'd been in and out of prison for stealing and dealing drugs. I knew that the moment that idiot got his hands on my granddad's medals, they would have been sold off. We looked into taking her to court over the will, but everyone we spoke to said that we probably wouldn't get anything out of it. She immediately put the house up for sale at close to £750,000. She'd angered too many people in our town, so she was going to sell the house and move closer to her daughter, who lives in a big city. An offer was made on the house, and she put down a deposit on a house near the big city, and I thought that was that. Here's where karma comes into play. The people who wanted my nan's house had a survey done on the house to see if there were issues. And oh boy, there were. It turns out that the land the house was built on was way too soft for the type of house it was, and it was sinking. It sunk about 2 centimeters in the 40 plus years my nan and granddad had lived there, but the sinking was accelerating to 1 centimeter per year. This meant that within the next 3 years, the house would need some serious work or be knocked down. The new value of the house? Just £60,000. Therefore, the buyers immediately pulled out, having not even put down a deposit. She couldn't buy her new house, but still had to pay the deposit on it. And while this was happening, she let Clive move in with her into her house that she rented from the council. He wasn't allowed to live in any of the council houses because he trashed every single one he'd ever been given. Somebody reported this, and she was kicked out of her home. She was forced to move into my nan's old home as she couldn't live anywhere else. So there she is, living in a crumbling house with her idiot son and her partner. She was stuck there for 2 years. Every time I saw her, she'd try and start talking to me, and I would just ignore her and walk off. One time, as I was walking away, she screamed, "Your mother deserved to die for having a R-word like you," in the middle of a busy street. Someone reported her to the police, and she had an official warning from them and was ridiculed on Facebook. Every time I saw her after that, she looked more and more miserable. Eventually, she sold the house for something like £85,000 and moved in with her daughter in the big city. I lost contact with her and her kids after this. I thought karma had been issued. Oh, but karma still wasn't done with her. I bumped into one of her former friends, and she told me what happened after she left our town. She moved into her daughter's home, let's call her Sue, but they only had a 3-bedroom house and 3 kids. My aunt and her partner had to live in the smallest room in the house, while my aunt looked for a job and a home to rent. Even with £85,000 cash, she couldn't afford a home anywhere. After about a month, my aunt's partner ran off after emptying her accounts. She was left stranded in Sue's house, not contributing anything because all the money she makes goes into bingo. Eventually, Sue and my aunt get into a screaming match, and my aunt says something along the lines of, "I should have aborted you." Sue immediately kicked her out of her house. So again, there's my aunt, in a city where she knows nobody, no money, no home, and the last bridge she had, a smouldering wreck. Last anyone has heard, she was living in a caravan in the roughest part of the city, and she can no longer work because she's suffering early onset arthritis and can no longer move her hands. I know I shouldn't get joy out of something like this happening to another person, but it does bring me some peace as to what happened. Wow, before we got into the end of that story, I was thinking, okay, that is some pretty good karma. I'm happy that everything seems to have evened itself out. And then there was another paragraph. And it kept going and going. And honestly, I loved every second of it. I mean, look, stealing someone's inheritance is one thing. But things like those war medals that have obviously been sold, you're never gonna get them back. Those are memories that have no price. You cannot put a price on them. They are so special to you and they've gone. I mean, that, if anything, is worth all that karma alone. And look, I'll say this. Karma is a but then again, so is your aunt. So it seems completely fair to me. Now, if you like stolen inheritance stories, you're going to want to stay tuned because I've got another one for you. Mum wants me to sign over 250,000 beneficiary check. My dad passed away recently, and it came to light that he named me as one of the beneficiaries on his life insurance policy. My mum says that it was a mistake and that I'm not supposed to be a beneficiary, just her. She wants me to file for the money and sign the check over to her. I'm going to go through with it because she is my mum and blah blah whatever. But the insulting part is that my mum says I can keep $5,000 from it to throw my wedding. I only have $2,000 from my own money because my partner and I are kinda broke. Is she being entitled? Or am I? Or both of us? Okay, wow, this is one of the craziest posts I've ever read. OP couldn't possibly be less understanding of the situation. I don't want to be harsh, but that is the truth. But thankfully, there is an update which we're going to get straight into, and hopefully some sense has come into OP's head, or at least someone has told them what they really should be doing here. Oh boy, well, some updates are due. First of all, thank you all for your concern and comments in my first post. It was helpful to hear your perspective on the money, and it definitely changed my view of the whole situation. To recap quickly, my dad passed away and he named me as a beneficiary on his life insurance policy. My mum said it was a mistake and that I'm not supposed to be a beneficiary, just her. So she wants me and my brother to file for the money and then sign the check over to her. Now on the policy, my mum is named at 34% and my brother and I are named at 33%, and my younger sister is not named. It turns out that the policy was not made before my sister was born, which adds to the murkiness and confusion surrounding why my sister is not included. My guess is that my dad signed up for this policy and forgot my sister's social, thinking he'd just come back to it later and revise. But he never got around to it, I guess. He was bipolar and did things impulsively sometimes. I think this life insurance policy was one of them. Well, at least he had life insurance. Suggesting we slow down and talk about this policy more has made me the bad guy in the family. My mum and my brother think that I am being selfish. It's gotten so tense that we have to discuss things via email because everyone is getting so emotional about it. My mum continues to insist that he made a mistake. She writes, "When Dad took out this policy, his intention was for me, my mum, to have money to pay off the house, which is already paid off by the way, and have financial means to take care of the family. Dad would never ever intentionally exclude his youngest daughter from this scenario if his intentions were to split things between the family. I believe he completed the paperwork incorrectly because he didn't understand how to write the policy to support his intentions." I responded with a proposal. The three of us split the cost of my dad's medical bills for the past 2 years.